Let's talk about this guy and his magic jazz hands. Silver the Hedgehog is a very interesting character, to say the least. He's a support character with a multitude of ways to support his team. And so you'd think that a lot of people would actually find him to be really, really good, as I do. But funnily enough, a lot of people, when talking about him, either say that he's mid or that he's just good. Which is why I'm making this video. I am going to attempt to, at least, try to prove that Silver the Hedgehog might just be one of the best characters in the game, being up there with Metal Sonic, Amy, and Knuckles, for just how good he is. So let's take a look at his abilities exactly, because I feel like that's the best way to start off when talking about Silver. Each and every single one of his abilities is supposed to be a niche but useful ability that doesn't work in every scenario, but when it does, it's pretty good. And I would go on to say that they are actually less niche than people think, and incredibly more useful than people like to think. So let's start off with Orb, because it is quite possibly the best ability in his kit right now. I know that a lot of people say that it's kind of bad because it's floaty and because it only stuns for an incredibly small amount of time, but think about it. A ranged stun that doesn't really have any sort of gravity physics attached to it, and is instead really floaty, is actually really good for an ability. Yeah, sure, it has a little bit of an arc to it, but that arc is way more easy to learn compared to Metal's grapple hook or Amy's hammer throw. And to me, the stun duration doesn't really seem like that big of an issue because of how spammy it is and the fact that Silver's a support character. Obviously, his stun is not going to be as powerful as stuns that belong to other characters. Plus, it's also a ranged ability. If it was something like Eggman's Shock, who was not able to stun for as long as he used to, then I would agree, but since it's a ranged attack, you're not necessarily going to stun him for 2 seconds when he's right in your face. Only if you use Orb when he's in your face is that going to happen. So while it doesn't stun for as long as other stuns, you are in significantly less danger compared to something like Eggman's Shock. And even when Sonic is in your face, it's not necessarily like using Orb as a melee option is a bad idea. Its low cooldown mixed with the fact that it can be activated instantly makes it really good. Compare that to any other ranged attack, and you realize just how powerful Orb really is at melee range, because every other character can either miss severely or has some sort of delay or a serious aiming problem, but with Silver, his weakness is that the stun doesn't last as long. So landing is really easy at melee range, and when you compare it to others, it's so much better. Not to mention that its spam ability allows you to help teammates at a distance, like let's say if someone's grabbed, or if someone's being chased, it's way easier to save a teammate that is being chased or has been grabbed as Silver, compared to other characters, like let's say Knuckles. Knuckles has an incredibly short cooldowns, but he's a melee character, so he can't necessarily save grab teammates as easily. But the fact that a support character has a stun that's this easy to land, and this powerful in terms of spamability, it surprises me, honestly. Like, I feel like the ability would be more balanced if it had a long cooldown, so that way, it could actually be more support type, instead of being something you can just throw at minions and Sonic to either save yourself or other teammates at all times, because you could really be spammy with this thing. And it's significantly more difficult for a Sonic player to counter Orb because of how fast he can activate and throw it. Compare that to something like Tails' arm cannon, you have significantly more time to react to him charging up and shooting the cannon, whereas with Silver it's just like that. Last time I checked, there was a moment in the early alpha versions of 1.2 where Amy could instantly throw her hammer, and everybody hated that, which is probably why Out gave a sort of delay. So basically, this thing is just a slightly worse version of 1.2 Alpha's hammer throw. Not to mention the fact that Orb actually has a pretty generous hitbox, and it's even somewhat kind of broken because there are times where I'll clearly see the Orb fly past Sonic, and he'll still get hit anyways. But that was just his first ability. We still haven't gotten to the other two, so let's talk about the second one, Speed Radius. Speed Radius is honestly really good and incredibly powerful. I honestly don't know why people consider it a niche type ability, because being able to move faster and make others move faster, regardless of where they are, as long as they're close to you, is really powerful. While it doesn't make you faster than Sonic, being able to stay away from him for longer by using Speed Radius can help your team out a lot. And you can also use it to move your entire team towards a grabbed teammate faster, making it so that way one person specifically isn't saving that grabbed teammate, but rather everybody is, because the speed boost it gives is pretty significant, and it definitely helps out when there's a grabbed teammate, or just in general when Sonic is near somebody and everybody else is sort of at a distance. But it is also good for more close-range encounters, as you do not have to be standing right next to your teammates, nor do you have to be standing on the same level as them, which I think is really nice. You don't have to do anything really specific or really challenging in order to do your job using Speed Radius. All you have to do is just stand near them. Plus, the ability is really good when juking is brought up, because it can allow you to move faster, aka throwing Sonic off just a little bit more than juking normally. But that's not even the best part of Speed Radius. No, I would say that the best part of Speed Radius is the synergy it has with other characters. For example, Metal Sonic. If you use Speed Radius and he's pushing Sonic, he pushes him further, and he is able to get away faster after pushing him. This is really powerful. And there's also Tails. One of his biggest weaknesses, besides the fact that he can't jump or use glide while charging up the arm cannon, is his speed. Speed Radius almost completely negates this. It negates one of his biggest weaknesses. Not only that, but it has really good synergy with both Sally and Eggman. Speed Radius makes Eggman a better character. I didn't think that could ever happen. Eggman being a better character, what a surprising concept. But now it is time to talk about Silver's final ability, and quite possibly the one that people think is the least useful, which makes sense. The ability has a very long cooldown, and it's pretty much the most situationally useful out of all of them, and it is definitely difficult to get the hang of if you don't play Silver a whole lot. But if you're here, I'm either assuming the algorithm brought you here, or you disagree with me, or you think Silver is a good character and want to get better at him. So let me explain the best uses for this ability. The ability is best used in typically crowded, incredibly narrow areas, and the best way to use it is to stop EXEs from charging, or to protect a teammate that's standing still, like maybe a Tails or a Cream when they're using one of their abilities. But all that is just the surface level stuff. There are still other aspects that the ability has that can make it better. For example, you can use the ability to pretty much cause Sonic to slap himself in the face when he's jumping up from a spring, which I think is really good. And you can also use it to stop him from climbing a ladder. At least temporarily, that is. Obviously, it will eventually disappear. But you can also use it to sort of juke out more experienced players. Let me explain. When a newer player typically is coming at you, they're either going to use a mobility option and then hit themselves in the face with the barrier, or they're going to just straight up walk into the barrier for like a good 2 to 3 seconds, because they don't really understand what just happened. But typically, experienced players sort of just walk around it. However, due to the fact that you can sort of hold down the ability, you don't need to immediately place it. What you can do with this ability is basically you can sort of play mind games with more experienced players, which causes them to find a way around the barrier. Hell, you don't even always need to use the ability. You can just straight up play mind games with them for 10 whole seconds as they attempt to try and find a way around you, if they're paranoid enough. Some of them are pretty confident and of course will not do this, but a lot of experienced players will typically notice that Silver has put his hands up and is now facing them. So you should always try and bring this into your strategy when you're fighting a more experienced player. Plus, there are specific places in some of the maps where the ability itself actually becomes really useful. Like for example, let's say that there's a corner somewhere. You can actually use Barrier to sort of corner yourself, meaning that Sonic can't get to you for a few seconds, which basically means you are completely invincible until the barrier goes down. And yes, boxing yourself in sometimes isn't a good idea, but with Silver, since he has such spammy abilities, he can sort of capitalize on this. There are also several narrow places on certain maps to where the barrier pretty much covers the whole thing, forcing Sonic to not be able to get around it until it disappears, which is very situational, but it's still there nonetheless. You can also commit acts of silly with a fellow Metal Sonic player if you collaborate with them on the map Hide and Seek Act 2, and the reason why I bring this up is because of how interesting it is. Basically, a Metal Sonic player can push Sonic into a locker, and then you can use Barrier to force him to stay in there. It requires a lot of collaboration, and it's not always the most useful thing, but it's still there nonetheless, and it still can be useful at times, but mostly it's just for the funnies. Although I still do agree with people that the cooldown of the ability should be reduced just a little bit. That would make it so much better. But now that I've gone over all the basic stuff relating to Silver's abilities and how each one of them is good, I want to talk more about Silver as a character. His whole thing is a support character, aka he needs to support his team as much as he can. And I would say having a spammy stun that you can use to get people off your back is way better than having a powerful stun that has a long cooldown in terms of, you know, how a support character works. Having all of these different abilities that each do something different that can be useful in some sort of way to your teammates makes Silver as good as he is. I like the fact that he can do lots of different things and that he's really spammy because it makes up for the fact that there aren't too many characters, specifically support characters in this game that are. Cream definitely isn't. Eggman is supposedly spammy, but let's be honest, he is not. Rouge is spammy to an extent, but I wouldn't necessarily say to the same extent that Silver is. Sally is also more towards the middle as well. And because of his spammy nature, he can be really aggressive despite being a support character. Aggressive support characters should be more of a thing in video games, in my opinion. Speaking of aggressiveness and abilities, there's something I want to talk about relating to Silver's abilities. In that I like that one of them does not lead to another being unusable. With Sally, yeah, she has 3 abilities, but if you use one of the shield abilities, the other one is unusable until the cooldown goes down. With Amy, if you use Hammer Throw, you are forced to not be able to use any of the other 2 abilities until you pick it up, and all abilities go on cooldown. With Metal Sonic, you are only able to use your 3rd ability if you're already mostly dead. But Silver, along with Rouge, doesn't really suffer from this problem, because each ability is different and each ability functions on its own cooldown. This means that you can combo with the abilities, either to help yourself or to help teammates. Like for example, using Orb to keep a Sonic player down for longer after they charged into one of your barriers, or using Speed Radius to give yourself more time for Orb to recharge. Being able to combo with your abilities makes Silver a way better character than if he, couldn't combo with his abilities. Eggman should take notes. And while it necessarily isn't always the best option to combo, having that option in the first place is never a bad idea, as it gives you the chance to make a hard decision. Should I combo with them, or should I not? Having options like that is what makes Silver such a good character. And now, we have reached the home stretch of this video, and I have saved, in my opinion, the best part of the video for last. I think when out-designed Silver. He made a lot of good choices. I genuinely believe that Silver is one of the best designed characters in this game, period. Let me explain. So, Silver can defend himself. If you want to, you can use all your abilities selfishly, and of course, while it is possible, and you can do it, it's not always the best idea. And that's what I like about a support character. Apart from healers, support characters should always be able to defend themselves to an extent. However, their abilities should be more powerful when they are around teammates. If you play Silver selfishly and then choose to play him more teammate-centric, you're going to notice a pretty big difference. And one thing I like is how using his abilities for your own benefit isn't always a bad idea. Sometimes it's good to, sometimes you need to. This game isn't trying to make you feel like you need to use Silver's abilities to always help your teammates. It just makes the abilities more powerful when you use them to help your teammates, which is something most support characters should be. And because of this, I've actually gotten pretty good at holding my own as Silver, like when I'm one of the last few left, or maybe my teammates just aren't in a very helping mood. And to help support the idea that Silver is really good when around his teammates and really good at holding his own in general, here are the 4 danger times that I had for the games shown in this video. And that's sort of all I had to say about him. I genuinely believe that Silver is the most well-designed, as well as one of the most fun support characters in the entire game, period. And if this video didn't persuade you, I don't really know what would. Maybe like a super cool orb landing compilation or something. But if that doesn't work, nothing will. But if this video did somehow manage to persuade you, well, that's good, because that means I'll be seeing more Silver players. More people will be able to take advantage of just how powerful he is. To others, he may seem weak. To me, he is way too powerful. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.
For the last several years, I have relied on prescription medication to make it through the days.